Hey, welcome back to our Candy Crush kind of application. Remember, in the previous videos we've gotten so far is we're able to select a current color from the panel over on the right side, and then whatever I click on the left side matches that color. So in this video we're going to make this into a flood fill routine, so it goes a lot faster. So here's how the recursion works. We're going to select the first color, the current selected one, and then we're going to move downward. I'm just picking south for the first direction randomly. It could be any direction, but R+1 will move further down the page. So the row 0 is at the top of the page and row 30 is at the bottom. So let's see how this works. So I'm going to select a color, let's say red, and then I'm going to select any box. And the program crashed. So what's the message here? It says that the index was outside the bounds of the array. So the reason why it would crash is because it keeps going, row +1, infinitely. And it obviously went off the edge of the grid, and the array is only so large. So that's why we get an index out of bounds. So we need a index out of bounds checker. So let's create a new function that will prevent this crash. So this helper function that I'm going to build is called isValid, and it will return a true or false value based on whether this is a cell that's on the grid. Now we've done something like this in a previous lesson. I believe it was the chessboard, so I'm going to pause here, see if you can come up with your own isValid function. And if you can't, I'll be back in a minute. Okay, either you gave up or else you've already got a solution. So anyway, you can check to see what I'm going to type here. So the first variable we're going to check is the R value. Is R within range? So the range is between anything between 0 inclusive up to the number of rows in our grid. So we're going to check the columns as well. So C is going to have to be greater than or equal to 0 and less than cols. If that is true, then it's a safe, or it's a valid square, and will return true. Otherwise it's false and will return false. So now we want to check to see if the cell is valid before we try flood fill. So now I'm going to insert the function isValid before I try to go to the next row. Okay, so when I click, you notice it went from the column that was at, and it went over to the right. So I've obviously mixed up my rows and columns, but the function does seem to be working. It fills to the right, and when it runs out of space, it hits the end column, it stops, so it no longer crashes. So it's getting close. We're not quite there. We need to have a few more function calls, but it is doing recursion. All right, I'm going to make a little bit of a change now. So instead of checking to see if the next column or row is valid, I'm just going to do one check for all of these directions. So I'm going to be doing flood fill in 4 different directions, and I don't want to have so many if statements. So instead of doing an if statement here, I'm going to move it to the top of the page, or top of the function, and instead of checking the next move, I'm going to check to see if this current cell is valid. If it is, then we can continue on. So let's see, all of this then goes inside of the brackets. Alright, I got all my tabs and things arranged now. So this should still work. It's going to check to see if the current cell is valid and then move on. So I'll select a red color and pick, and sure enough, it seems to be working. So the isValid will check to see if the current cell is valid and then move on. So if we go to the next row where it's out of bounds, when it calls the flood fill function, it will not continue. Now I'm going to add something else because I don't want to fill automatically all the way to the right. I want to check another condition. So we want to not just fill the entire row, but we want to conditionally fill it to see if the button matches the original one that we clicked. So let's put in this condition. So the next condition is going to check to see if this button matched the original color that was clicked from the grid. So remember, original color is whatever in the grid was clicked. So this should change something. So I'm going to select red here, and let's click a row here. So I'm going to click the row of 3 pinks, and you can see that it fills up. Let's go and see if we can find another row of solid colors. Let's see, I'm going to pick yellow now and pick here. So yellow now is extended. Let's go to orange and select. Now let's try pink. I see pink is the next guy up. So pink We all go down to there. Now orange. So this is a condition that says I will keep going until I bump into either the edge of the board or a new color. So everybody turn red. Now everyone looks like we want to turn yellow. So my flood fill is working in one dimension, which isn't bad. It's a start. Let's see if we can make it go in the other directions. So if I want to go in another direction, let's say I want to go to the west. And that will be then, looks like R minus 1, and then that'll be C. So we'll call flood fill again, and this time we'll do R minus 1 and C. So this should fill to the left and to the right. Let's hope so. Okay, so I'm going to pick an area. Let's see, I'll pick red. I'm looking for, let's see, I'll try this black thing. Okay, so it went to the right, went there. Now I'm going to pick, let's see, what's next coming up? Either white or blue. I'll try blue. And I'm going to select in the middle. So it fills to the right and to the left. Okay, let's pick white this time. Left and right. Looks like it's working. Okay, now we need to go north and south, and our flood fill should be working. So this will bring us to another dimension. So R this time, and then C plus 1. So let's see how this works here. We're going to, I've got a whole region of blues here. I'm going to select another color like yellow and click in the middle. So it filled to the left and to the right and down. So it went south. The next we'll be on is north. All right, so the last one is going to be the new flood fill for R and C minus 1. Now obviously I've mixed up my rows and columns. I thought R's were C's, but it is calculating correctly even though my labels seem to be strange. Okay, we're up and running now. Let's pick a color and pick a region. So let's go to these pinks and let's try yellows next, and let's try whites. Seems to be filling all the way around. Let's try gray, and it is filling up like I expected it to. So that is flood fill. Amazing. So you can see that the flood fill seems to be working. Every time I select a color, it fills up to the edges of its range and then stops. So we're going to be using this obviously in our Minesweeper because Minesweeper is going to have flood fill as well. We do have another method that needs to be done very quickly, the reset button. So let's double click on reset, and we got a new method here. So the reset button will simply clear all the control contents. So delete them all and then repopulate the grid. Okay, so if I push reset, it clears the grid and recreates a new grid. So it seems to be working there. All right, so that brings us to a working definition of flood fill. In the next video, I'm going to finish this assignment off with some extra customizations that I'd like you to make that will improve the quality of the game.